Dante Russo had buried 11 men in his 40-year life. Some deserved it. Some didn't. None of them haunted him the way the woman dusting his bookshelf did. He couldn't see her face from where he stood in the doorway of his Chicago penthouse study. Just her back, her dark hair twisted into a bun, her movements efficient and nearly soundless. She was reaching for a leather-bound copy of Great Expectations when the afternoon light caught her left hand. The ring. Dante's heart, a muscle that had forgotten how to feel anything but calculated rage, stopped cold. Copper wire. Twisted and amateur. At its center, a fragment of green glass from a broken beer bottle, edges worn smooth by a boy's determination and a girl's prayers. He knew that ring. God help him, he knew it. Because 25 years ago, in the basement of St. Anthony's Orphanage, a 15-year-old boy with bloody knuckles and no future had made it for the only person who'd ever looked at him like he was worth saving. The woman turned, and Dante Russo, feared enforcer, ruthless boss of the Russo crime family, the man Chicago's underworld called Il Silenzio because he killed without warning, nearly fell to his knees. It was her. 3 weeks earlier, Dante had fired his entire household staff in a single sentence. Get out. All of you. Now. It wasn't dramatic. Dante didn't do dramatic. He did efficient, surgical, permanent. The offense? His head of staff, a woman named Gianna Moretti, who came recommended by 3 judges and a state senator, had rearranged his private office. She'd moved his files into a better organizational system. She'd replaced his leather chair with something she called ergonomic. She'd even had the audacity to suggest he needed more natural light. Control was oxygen to Dante Russo. The moment someone tried to improve his life, they'd already failed to understand what he needed. He needed order. He needed silence. He needed to know that when he came home after burying a problem in the woods outside Joliet, nothing would be different from how he left it. Gianna had tried to argue. Mr. Russo, I was only trying is noise, Dante said quietly. He never raised his voice. I pay you to execute, not experiment. You're done. The story spread through Chicago's elite circles by the next morning. At a charity brunch in Lincoln Park, where the city's wealthy gathered to feel better about their wealth, the gossip was merciless. Furniture, Patricia DeMarco said, her mimosa paused mid-sip. He fired 8 people over furniture. I heard it was the lighting, added Marie Costello, who'd made it her life's work to know everyone's business in Chicago's upper echelons. Whatever it was, said Francesca Romano, wife of a federal prosecutor who'd been trying to build a case against Dante for 6 years, the man is a monster. Gorgeous, powerful, untouchable, and completely soulless. But it was Catherine Donovan, the only woman at the table who'd actually met Dante Russo, who spoke the truth that made the others uncomfortable. He's not soulless, Catherine said quietly. She'd sat across from him at a political fundraiser once, had looked into those dark eyes. He's haunted, like he's running from something that's already caught him. 200 miles south, in a cramped office above a dry cleaner in Indianapolis, a woman named Rosa Martinez was having a different conversation. This is the 9th staffing agency he's destroyed in 2 years, Rosa said, sliding a thick folder across her scarred desk. Dante Russo doesn't want employees. He wants ghosts. The woman across from her didn't reach for the folder. Isabella Chin, she went by Bella now, had for years, sat with her hands folded in her lap, her posture perfect but unassuming. Everything about her invited you to look past her. That was the point. What did the others do wrong? Bella asked. They existed. Rosa leaned back, her chair creaking. Dante Russo wants someone who'll maintain his fortress, anticipate his needs, keep his world pristine, all without ever being seen, acknowledged, or remembered. Then, why does he keep terminating contracts? Because people can't help themselves. They try to connect. They try to be helpful. They try to be human. Rosa tapped the folder. But you, Isabella, in 7 years, I've never had a single complaint about you. Most clients forget you were ever there. In this business, that's the highest praise. Bella's lips curved slightly. Invisible suits me. Perfect. Because this job requires you to disappear. Rosa pushed the folder closer. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't change anything without instruction. Don't leave a single trace that you were ever in his space.
Can you do that?
What's the compensation? Rosa named a figure that would have made most people gasp. Bella's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly on her lap. I'll do it, Bella said. As she reached for the folder, her sleeve shifted. Rosa caught a glimpse of the ring, homemade, crude, utterly out of place on a professional housekeeper's hand. Rosa filed the observation away and said nothing. Some questions weren't her business. The Russo penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a luxury building overlooking Lake Michigan. Bella arrived at 4:30 a.m. when the November cold made the lake look like hammered steel. The previous staff had left chaos, dishes in the sink, files scattered across surfaces, a half-eaten meal rotting on the granite counter. Bella got to work. She removed her shoes at the entrance, replacing them with felt-soled slippers that made no sound on the marble floors. The apartment was exactly what she'd expected: cold, pristine, expensive. A fortress pretending to be a home. But there were tells. Small things most people wouldn't notice. The coffee maker was set for 5:47 a.m. exactly. Not 5:45. Not 5:50. 5:47. The bedroom thermostat was locked at 64 degrees. Every book on the shelves was organized by height, not author or genre. These weren't the habits of a man who liked order. These were the survival mechanisms of someone who'd learned that control was the only thing standing between him and chaos. Bella understood that language. She'd spent her own life building similar walls. She worked for 13 hours straight. Didn't eat. Didn't sit. Didn't make a sound. By the time she finished, the sun was setting over the lake in shades of amber and blood. She'd scrubbed every surface, reorganized nothing, restored everything to exactly how it had been. Only cleaner, quieter, better. She left through the service entrance and disappeared. Dante came home at 9 p.m. after a meeting in Cicero that had required his particular talents for persuasion. His knuckles were bruised beneath his leather gloves. He stopped in the foyer. Something was different. Not wrong. Different. The apartment felt lighter. Like someone had opened windows in a room that had been sealed for years. He walked through the space slowly, searching for evidence. There was none. No fingerprints on the glass. No scent of perfume or cleaning products. No sign anyone had been there at all. Except everything was perfect. In the kitchen, he found a glass of water with lemon. Not in the center of the counter, that would have been intrusive. But off to the side, casual, like an afterthought. Dante picked it up, studied it, then drank it in 3 swallows. In the living room, he noticed the blackout curtains had been opened exactly 4 inches. Enough to let in the city lights. Not enough to compromise privacy. That night, Dante Russo slept without pills for the first time in 8 years. He simply lay in his bed, watching the reflected lights dance on his ceiling, and let the silence carry him under. 3 weeks passed. Dante never saw his housekeeper. She was a phantom. Evidence of her existence was everywhere: fresh flowers that appeared and vanished, shirts pressed with military precision, coffee ready at exactly 5:47 a.m., but the woman herself remained invisible. Dante found himself watching for her, setting traps, coming home early, leaving late, hoping to catch even a glimpse. But she always knew, always stayed 1 step ahead. Why did he care? This was exactly what he'd demanded. A ghost who served without existing. So, why did the apartment feel warmer than it had in a decade? He started testing her. He left a book on the coffee table. The Count of Monte Cristo. The same edition they'd read together at St. Anthony's, passed between them during the mandatory quiet hours, their heads bent close over the pages. He watched through the security feed as she found it. Watched her freeze. Watched her fingers trace the cover like she was touching something sacred. She didn't cry, but she held that book against her chest for a full minute before carefully placing it on the pillow where he rested his head each night. She knows. She has to know. He left a photograph. The only one he had from St. Anthony's, a Polaroid taken at a Christmas party by a volunteer who'd felt sorry for the kids. Two children grinning at the camera, a 15-year-old boy with hard eyes and bloody knuckles, a 12-year-old girl with a smile that could melt steel. Bella found it tucked into a book. She studied it for so long the security timestamp rolled forward 3 minutes. Then she placed it on his nightstand, angled so he'd see it first thing when he woke. He accidentally knocked over his espresso onto important documents, contracts with the Moretti family that could start a war if mishandled. She appeared from nowhere, moving with practiced efficiency, saving every page. When she finished, she left something on top of the rescued papers. A peppermint candy. The cheap kind with red stripes. St. Anthony's Christmas party. The candy jar Sister Margaret kept locked in her office. The way they'd sneak in during Mass, hearts pounding with a thrill of minor rebellion, stealing 2 or 3 mints they'd make last for weeks. If we get caught, Bella had whispered once, I'll say I did it alone. That's stupid. Why would you do that? Because you're going to be somebody important someday. You can't have a record. She'd believed in him. When he'd been nothing but a street kid with a violent streak and a rap sheet that started at age 11, she'd looked at him and seen something worth protecting. And now she was here, taking care of him, leaving peppermint candies on his contracts like messages in bottles. For weeks in, Dante came home to find soup on the counter. Not the gourmet nonsense his previous staff had served. No truffle oil. No exotic ingredients. No presentation. This was simple broth with overcooked vegetables and too much oregano. The kind of soup the cafeteria at St. Anthony's used to serve on Friday nights. The kind that tasted like nothing and everything at the same time. Dante sat at his kitchen counter, the same counter where he'd once planned a hit on a rival family, and ate the entire bowl. Then he sat there for another hour, staring at the empty dish, feeling something inside him crack open that he'd spent 25 years keeping welded shut. The charity event was Franco Castellano's idea. Franco was Dante's consigliere, the closest thing he had to a friend, and the only person brave enough to tell him the truth. Boss, you're trending on social media. And not the good kind. I don't care about social media. You should care about perception. The families are talking. They're saying you're unstable, erratic. That furniture incident has people questioning your judgment. So Dante agreed to host a fundraiser at his penthouse. One night. Classical music. Carefully vetted guest list. A show of normalcy and control. What he didn't anticipate was that Bella would be pressed into service to coordinate the temporary staff. The night of the gala, the penthouse blazed with light. Crystal. White roses. A string quartet playing Vivaldi by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Dante stood at the center of it all in a custom Tom Ford suit, accepting handshakes from politicians and rival family bosses with a smile that never touched his eyes. But his attention kept drifting. Through the crowd of Illinois state senators and Chicago's elite, through the forest of designer gowns and Rolex watches, he searched for a glimpse of dark hair, of efficient movements, of the woman who'd become the only real thing in his carefully constructed lie of a life. He found her near the kitchen entrance, quietly redirecting a waiter who'd nearly dropped a tray of champagne glasses. She wore the same gray uniform she always did, moved with the same invisible grace. But being in the same room as her, actually sharing space instead of watching through cameras, made Dante's chest tight. The incident happened at 11:47 p.m. Francesca Romano, the prosecutor's wife who'd called Dante soulless at her charity brunch, was holding court near the windows. She wore a red gown that cost more than most people's cars and a diamond necklace worth more than most people's houses. She was also on her 5th glass of Barolo. The glass slipped. Or she gestured too wildly. Or God decided it was time. The wine arced through the air like blood. Bella appeared from nowhere, interposing herself between Francesca and the falling liquid. The wine splashed across her gray uniform, staining it dark and permanent. Francesca's face flushed with embarrassment that quickly turned to rage. You clumsy idiot. Look what you've done. Mrs. Romano, I apologize. Apologize? You've ruined my evening. Francesca's voice cut through Vivaldi, drawing stares from nearby guests. Do you have any idea what this moment is worth? More than you'll earn in your pathetic life? I'd wager. Bella didn't flinch. She stood there absorbing Francesca's fury, like stone absorbing rain. And what is that? Francesca's eyes had fallen to Bella's hand. To the ring. Is that garbage? Are you wearing literal trash? She grabbed Bella's wrist, yanking it up for the crowd to see. My God, it is trash. Copper wire and broken glass. I knew the help was desperate, but this is... The ring slipped. Francesca's grip. The angle of Bella's wrist. The copper worn thin from 25 years of constant wear. The ring slid free and fell. Tink. The sound was tiny, barely audible over the music and conversation. But Dante heard it from across the room. It cut through everything. He was moving before conscious thought kicked in. Across the marble floor. Past state senators and mob bosses and Chicago's elite. People were staring. Phones were out. Franco was probably having an aneurysm somewhere. Dante didn't care. Francesca was still holding Bella's wrist, still lecturing about appropriate behavior for servants, completely unaware that the most dangerous man in Chicago was bearing down on her. Dante dropped to his knees. The marble was cold through his suit pants. People gasped. Cameras flashed. He didn't care. The ring had rolled against a table leg. Dante picked it up with hands that had broken bones, pulled triggers, signed death warrants. Those hands were shaking now. He pulled a silk pocket square from his jacket, monogrammed, handmade in Italy, and carefully, reverently cleaned the copper wire. The room had gone silent. Even Vivaldi had stopped. Dante rose to his feet and turned to Francesca Romano. Mrs. Romano. His voice was quiet. He never raised his voice. You could buy this entire building if you wanted. You could buy everything in it. You could buy the ground it stands on. He took Bella's hand, gently, so gently, and slid the ring back onto her finger. But you don't have enough money in all of your husband's offshore accounts to purchase the right to touch this ring. He looked directly into Francesca's eyes, and she took an involuntary step back. Its value exceeds the GDP of small countries. Do you understand me? Francesca's face had gone from red to white. Mr. Russo, I didn't realize. Your car is waiting downstairs. I suggest you use it. He turned his back on her and faced Bella. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Shock. Recognition. Something deeper that had been waiting 25 years to surface. Dante. His name on her lips. Spoken aloud for the first time since childhood. Not here, he said. Not now. But soon. He released her hand and walked away. Behind him, the gala erupted into chaos. Bella left before dawn. Dante found her resignation letter on the kitchen counter in the exact spot where she always left his lemon water. Mr. Russo, I apologize for any disruption caused by last night's incident. My presence has become inappropriate given recent events. The ring you recognized belonged to a boy I knew at St. Anthony's Orphanage. He made it for me when we were children, and I have worn it every day since. I did not come here to collect on old promises. I came because I needed work and believed I could do the job well. I was wrong. I wish you peace. You deserve more than you know. Isabella. Dante read it 3 times. Then he crumpled it into a ball, threw it across the room, and said several words that would have gotten his mouth washed out with soap at St. Anthony's. The apartment was silent around him. Not the peaceful silence Bella had created. The old silence. The empty silence. The silence of a fortress with no one worth protecting. He found her address in the employee files. A neighborhood on Chicago's South Side he remembered too well. Section 8 housing with barred windows. The smell of garbage and exhaust. Graffiti declaring territory in spray paint. He parked his 1987 Buick LeSabre, the first car he'd ever bought, kept in storage for 25 years, and waited. She appeared 4 hours later, walking home from work. Not the staffing agency. Somewhere else. A diner, from the grease stains on her clothes. She carried a plastic bag that probably contained dinner. She stopped when she saw him leaning against the Buick. For a long moment, They just looked at each other across 20 feet of broken sidewalk. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. "The media will have a field day." "I don't care about the media. Your reputation was built on being cold and ruthless and untouchable." Dante pushed off from the car. "I spent 25 years becoming that person because it was safer. Because if everyone thought I was a monster, no one would try to get close. No one would find out that underneath all the power, I was still just a scared kid from St. Anthony's who lost the only person who ever mattered." Bella didn't move. "You left," Dante continued, his voice rough. 25 years ago. They transferred you to a different facility in Gary, Indiana, and I woke up one morning and you were gone. No goodbye. No forwarding address. Nothing. They came the middle of the night. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Social services. They didn't tell me either. I tried to leave you a note, but Sister Margaret wouldn't let me." "I know. I found out later." He took a step closer. "But by then you'd disappeared into the system, and I was still a kid with nothing." Another step. "I told myself I'd find you when I made it. When I had the power to search every database in the country." Another step. "And I did, Bella. I found you 7 years ago." The shock on her face was raw. "You knew where I was?" "I had investigators send me updates. Photos. I knew about the foster homes that didn't work out. About your mother dying when you were 19. About the night classes you took to get your GED. About every job you worked." He stopped close enough to see the tears forming. "I knew everything." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was a coward." The admission tasted like blood. "Because I convinced myself the boy you believed in didn't exist anymore. I'd killed him. Buried him under bodies and blood money, and all the violence I needed to survive." He reached into his jacket. "But then you showed up in my home, taking care of me the same way you did when we were kids. And I realized that boy isn't dead." He pulled out a small velvet box. Not black. Worn brown, like something kept for a very long time. "He's been waiting for you to come back, Dante. I'm not giving you a diamond." He opened the box. Inside was a spool of copper wire, bright and new, and beside it a small pair of wire cutters. "You never wanted a diamond. You wanted this." Bella stared at the box. "Teach me," Dante said. "Teach me how to make another ring. Let me earn you this time. Let me prove I can be the boy you believed in, and the man I became." "You want to make a ring? Here? On this street? I want to spend the rest of my life making things with you." "Rings. A home. Maybe." He took her hand, the one with the old copper ring. "Maybe even a family. If God's willing to forgive me enough for that." Bella looked at him for a long moment. At the velvet box. At their joined hands. "You really planned this?" "I've been planning this since I was 15 years old. I just took a longer route than expected." She laughed. It was a wet sound, mixed with tears, but it was the most beautiful thing Dante Russo had ever heard. "Okay," she said. "Give me the wire cutters." 1 year later, the Russo penthouse had changed. Photographs covered the walls now. Not expensive art, but snapshots from St. Anthony's. Pictures of 2 kids making copper rings on a Chicago sidewalk. A framed copy of The Count of Monte Cristo, held together with tape. Dante sat in his study, taking a video call with the heads of the 5 families. His suit was Brioni. His watch was Patek Philippe. On his left hand, slightly crooked and obviously handmade, sat a ring of twisted copper wire with a fragment of green glass at its center. The family bosses had learned not to ask about it. The door opened, and he felt a hand on his shoulder. "Meeting's running long," Bella said. "Dinner's ready. Give me 5 minutes." 5 minutes, Dante. Her voice was patient. "The soup's getting cold." He looked at the screen. At the men who controlled Chicago's underworld. "Meeting adjourned," Dante said, and closed the laptop. Bella settled into his lap, laughing. Their rings clinked together. Copper on copper. "When I took that job with the staffing agency," she said, "I never imagined it would lead to this. When I fired 8 people over furniture, I never imagined it either." "That was ridiculous, by the way." "I know." He pressed a kiss to her hair. But if I hadn't been ridiculous, they would have sent someone else. Bella was quiet for a moment. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't kept the ring? Dante thought about it. About the cold years. The violent years. The years of building walls and forgetting how to be human. I think we would have found each other anyway, he said. Maybe not here. Maybe not now. But somehow, God doesn't let promises like ours just disappear. That's very faithful for a man in your line of work. Faith is all I had as a kid. Then I lost it. Then you came back and gave it to me again. She laughed, and Dante held her closer. Outside, Lake Michigan stretched toward the horizon, dark and endless. And on the kitchen counter, a bowl of soup was getting cold. The same soup they'd eaten at St. Anthony's. With too much oregano and not enough meat. It tasted like childhood. It tasted like redemption. It tasted like home. And that's where our story ends. Not with power or empires, but with 2 copper rings and a bowl of soup getting cold. Because the richest love stories aren't about what we gain. They're about what we refuse to let go. About promises kept in the dark. About faith that survives even when we bury it. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe. New stories drop every week, each one a reminder that some vows are sacred. Even the ones we make as broken kids with nothing but hope. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.